Good evening. How are you, Marcia?
I am doing great. I have to come out of that. That is painful to talk about, to be honest.
If I
Because,
may,
yes,
I had the pleasure of hearing just the final exchange you had with the two young men, and I would just like to tell the young men, maybe if they're still listening, not casting your vote is a vote. Staying out of the process, you have actually casted a vote. Um, not participating gives the politicians, no matter what side you're on, it gives them an opportunity to continue without having heard your voice. And even if you think that your one vote doesn't count, you can be an activist, gather your friends, multiply your vote through your activism. And but not participating doesn't take you any further. So that would just be my only comment to the young man.
yeah. Ah, yeah, it's the pain of these young people. I don't know if you're hearing it as you go in your constituencies and so on, but it is very painful. I've never seen anything like this. The level of destitution and hurt that is happening to our people, our flesh and blood in this country. It makes you somber. It makes you thoughtful. You
Yes,
know.
I think as you're aware, this is my first time as a candidate. And
Yes.
you agree with you, one of the most sobering things that I have encountered is to speak to individual voters. Yes, young people who say they can't find a job. Um, I every time that I go into the constituency, and I'm in the constituency sometimes 3, 4 days a week, I never fail to hear a young person say they cannot find a job. And I even encountered a young man last weekend who has a job, but it isn't enough. And he was saying, listen, I'm willing to do more. So I don't know if the present government is listening, but these are real issues by real Barbadians, young Barbadians, older Barbadians, everyone. And I don't know I get the impression that the government is not listening, but I digress.
Yeah. Yes. Well, we are actually, I want to thank you for joining us and for just even giving your wisdom on that matter. Um, I want to move on, but I just want to say to people that, we do this show because we love Barbados and it's very time consuming. And to not be involved in the process, to just sit down and talk about what's going on and not be willing to change it. I'm not part of that. I can't. That is not being responsible. I love Barbados and I want to see it changed. And I know that it can be changed. And that's why we do this show. I just want to say that. I'm seeing some comments and I want to say that. But over to you, sir. I heard you on the program last night, and I think you have such a gift to take the most complex um, concepts and break it down in such a way that the average person can understand. And that's what happened for me on DLP TV. I want to thank Honorable Ralph Thorne and the DLP TV and all of the wonderful guests, the panelists, and he did a great job in hosting. Um, and I just want to say thank you for that. You're a gift to this country. That's my view. And I want to just move out of the way for you to um, just talk to us from visitor. This is my topic, from visitor to voter, Barbados democracy for sale. That's my topic. So I'm going to turn it right over to you, sir. You go ahead, take as long as you need to take.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. If in fact I do have a gift, I think that I am at a space in time where I want to make sure that that gift is available to the people of Barbados. I share your sentiments in that I do love Barbados. It is my birthplace. I have lived and worked here for most of my life. And I am here now because I believe that we are in an era and a dispensation of change. And I believe that the Barbadian people need to be aware of all that is happening around them and be aware not just at the surface level. I think sometimes we politicians, we underestimate the Barbadian people's ability to understand and to digest and to have opinions
Mm-hmm.
on what's happening around them. And yes, some of it resides in complicated pieces of law, but I think that there is an inherent responsibility to come to the people and to explain honestly what is
Mm-hmm.
within the laws that we seek to pass that affects the lives of every Barbadian. So tonight, my job, coming on the heels of a national address by the Honorable Prime Minister on yesterday evening, where she addressed the issues of the free movement of people in Barbados, which took effect from today. The address was quite soothsaying, as it would be, to almost attempt to lay aside the fears of the Barbadian people. Um, my job tonight is to look at that bill, look at what the Prime Minister has said, and be able to dissect a lot of what she said, and also to dissect what she did not say. Now, the free movement of people, it's not quite law as yet, but as in her address, she said that her cabinet is in full agreement with the measures. They will go into effect from today, but the actual bill, which is the Immigration Bill 2025, remains on the floor of the House of Parliament, and the bill has gone into what is called the Joint Select Committee on Governance, and that bill going into the Joint Select Committee on Governance does allow for the average Barbadian, for the public to actually comment on the bill. What happens is that Parliament will put out a notice into the media when Barbadians have an opportunity to make comments on the bill. So, listeners, you can wait out for that notice within the media, that you can opportunity to write in, and I believe sometimes there's even opportunity to make oral presentations before the committee um, on the bill. So the bills has not been passed into law, but the measures are going into effect from today. And the Prime Minister assured that no Caribbean national or no one entering Barbados would be prejudiced as the bill makes its way through Parliament. So we have an opportunity tonight to still look at a bill and to challenge a lot of what the Prime Minister said last night. And also, as I said, to bring attention to what the Prime Minister did not say. So let me jump straight into it. The free movement of CARICOM nationals is not a new thing. This was part of the initiative under the Treaty of Chaguaramas and under the free market and economy, the CARICOM free market and economy. It was part of the initiative to say that as a unified CARICOM, citizens of CARICOM should be able to freely move throughout CARICOM without having to apply for work permits. And there have been steps in the past that have come close or have moved the needle towards that. For example, you have the CARICOM Skills National Certificate, but that is something you have to apply for, and then you're able to go and work in different CARICOM nations. What this new initiative by the government does is that it removes a lot of those procedural requirements in order to come and work in Barbados. So what it does is that it removes a lot of that, and CARICOM nationals can now come to Barbados, receive an indefinite stay in Barbados, to not just stay and reside, but also
Mm-hmm.
stay, reside, and work in Barbados. The actual entry into Barbados as a CARICOM national is nothing new as well. This was settled law in the 2013 case. I'm sure many of your voters would remember because it was a highly publicized case, the Shanique Myrie case against the state
Yes.
of Barbados. where the CCJ's ruling gave CARICOM nationals, based on the Treaty of Chaguaramas, gave CARICOM nationals a right to enter Barbados. What this new legislation does is that it's not now just a right to enter, but you can enter and you can go beyond. Normally, as Barbadians know, as you travel, once you enter, you kind of get a 6 month stay. And if you come up to that 6 months, you would then have to apply to the immigration department to either extend that 6 months or you apply for residency. What this new initiative does is that it removes those requirements, and at the point of entry, an immigration officer is able to give a CARICOM national, is able to give them an indefinite stay within Barbados. On the screen, you can see that we have up there the provisions of the new bill, and I've highlighted some of the key areas where it says a person can enter and remain in Barbados on such conditions for such a period of time. And if you scroll down to the next page, just to get the highlight. So I
What
avoided
section are you on? What section?
that section
This
four.
one.
This is section 4.1 of
For
the
one.
proposed immigration bill. So it
Okay.
says that the officer can now grant entry of the CARICOM national for such a time as that officer determines. So there are some limits for students and there are some limits for persons coming to get medical attention. But broad strokes is that once you're a CARICOM national, you're able to enter Barbados, and you're able to enter and be able to be given an indefinite stay, and you're able to work in Barbados. And the Prime
Okay,
Minister,
could you pause there, sir? Because we want to make sure we have the right thing on the screen, because we want to for the viewers to be able to follow.
yes,
So
that was the right. That was the right.
this is the right one.
Yes.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it says there that a person, and if you just read the highlighted portions, a person can enter and remain in Barbados on such conditions and for such period. So before, when you came to immigration, your passport would be stamped for 6 months. Now this new bill is saying it could be for such period, an indefinite period that you can come and enter Barbados. So it's no longer restricted to 6 months. There are some other restrictions based on, again, if you are a student, or if you're a student, you're limited to 5 years. If you're, for example, if you're coming for medical attention, you're still limited to the 6 months. But those are just some exceptions. But generally speaking, a person, a CARICOM national, can come to Barbados now based on this proposed bill, and they can enter Barbados on the conditions that the immigration office sets, but they can be for such a period at the discretion of the immigration officer.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, sir. So this has nothing to do with what happened today.
No, this is exactly what happened today. This is exactly what has happened.
So it's just for the three countries.
Well, the four countries, including
Barbados.
Themselves, right, including Barbados.
Just so the four countries, including
Well, no,
Barbados.
what has happened is that the four countries have put this measure in place.
Right.
But this measure is for any CARICOM national, right? So what has happened is that St. Vincent, Dominica, Belize, and Barbados have gone ahead of its other CARICOM counterparts to initiate this initiative. So while a Trinidadian, for example, national could come and benefit in Barbados from this provision, a Barbadian, there is no reciprocal provision within Trinidad, in other words. So if a Barbadian went to Trinidad or went to Jamaica or went to Antigua, they would still be subject to maybe the 6 month stay based on their ability to enter, but they would not have the ability to stay indefinitely and work. So it's not a reciprocal arrangement. What has happened is that these four territories have taken the lead and have gone ahead of the other territories to implement this measure. A good example would be, for example, the ascension to the CCJ as the final court of appeal, where you have Barbados and other territories have taken the initiative to allow the CCJ to be its final court of appeal, but there are other CARICOM territories that have not done that. For example, Trinidad still takes its appeal to the Privy Council in London. So the point here is that there are certain provisions or certain requirements within the Treaty of Chaguaramas that some territories have gone full throttle ahead, and have embraced those provisions within their local laws when others have not. So this is an example of that. And just to repeat, so those 4 territories, and I'm not examining the laws of the 4 territories, but based on what the Prime Minister has said, these 4 territories have now gone ahead and put within their laws the provision for free movement, whereas other territories would not have done that so as yet, right? Now, I want to state from the perspective of the Democratic Labour Party, we are in full support of the free movement of people. And I want to repeat that because oftentimes within our political discourse, people believe that the opposition just opposes things for opposing sake. And this is not that. This exercise tonight, as I have done in the past, is an opportunity to not just take at face value what the government is saying, but it is to go beneath the hood of that car and begin to examine the engine that drives that policy to the extent that the Barbadian public can be properly informed of all of the implications of that policy. So the Democratic Labour Party is not opposed to the free movement of people. We are in support of it, actually, because one of the major things is that the Caribbean community does have to move towards greater integration. And the free movement of persons is part and parcel of that integration, and the Democratic Labour Party fully supports it. The Prime Minister last night, however, made, and I listened to her entire address 3 times because I wanted to make sure that I got all of the nuances. During the address, she said 2 things. She said, we need it and we are ready. So I want to piggyback on those 2 notions from the Prime Minister. Says we need it and we are ready. In addressing what she determined was the need for the free movement of persons, the idea is actually quite sound. The idea is that Barbados is an aging population. Mm-hmm. In the constituency, for example, in the constituency in which I am contending in the next election, which is Christchurch South, and I've looked at the numbers, 80% of the constituencies on the list in Christchurch South are over the age of 41. And 40% of the constituents in Christchurch South are over the age of 65. So Barbados, the statistics bear out that Barbados is an aging population. What does that mean? It means that you have a shrinking working class, a shrinking labor force that now has to bear the burden of the aging or the aged or the elderly in the country. And therefore, the contributions to national insurance, the contributions to the tax base then has to support an aging population. So the idea that we do need to address the issues of population in Barbados are very sound. That also means that you're trying to increase the labor force to the extent that there's greater participation in the labor force. That means that you have greater contributions to the NIS contributions, and you also have greater contribution to the tax base. So what the initiative seems to be aiming towards is to solve what is a problem of economics at the base level, to the extent that you have a labor force that is shrinking compared to a population that is aging. And you can look at the statistics and you can see that this is the case. What that is coupled with also, however, is an NIS fund that has come under pressure within the last few years, to the extent that this government has extended the retirement age. In 2018, there was significant debt that was restructured from the NIS, and there were losses within the NIS fund. So there are a lot of factors that come to bear on the economics of this situation. And therefore, part of the solution that the government seems to have adopted is to fast track this idea of immigrants, I beg your pardon, coming into Barbados to increase the labor force and have an impact on the economics of Barbados from the perspective that you have greater contribution to the NIS contributions, you have greater participation in labor, so you have an increase in the tax base, and you have greater production in the economy, which would have an impact on the GDP of Barbados.
GDP, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the reasoning appears sound, but as we point out, you have to be able to look under the surface. And when you come up with policies that have one goal in mind, you always have to look at the extraneous or the peripheral impacts of that policy as well. You just can't get up and say, okay, this is the policy and this is what it will achieve, without having to look at the broader picture and to see if the other implications of that policy can bear exactly what it is you're trying to do. So I repeat, from the Democratic Labour Party's perspective, we are in full support of the free movement of people, if for no other reason as to the advancement of CARICOM unity and the integration of the CARICOM states. However, as has been the pattern of this government, there seems to be a gallop down the aisle of legislation without this large cabinet giving full thought and full analysis to all of the implications. And the Prime Minister's address was featured in the Barbados Nation today with a headline saying there's no trying to allay fears, there are no job fears. So this idea that she's trying to calm the concerns of the nation by simply coming on and speaking in a soothed tone and calling everybody her friends and my friends, and all of that is fine and good, but where is the analysis of all of the implications of this bill? So she said we need it. Then she says we are ready. So my question today is, are we truly ready for an influx of citizens from across the Caribbean into Barbados, to the extent that we raise the labor force and we raise the population? Are we in fact ready? And I put a question mark there, and I'm not going to conclude, but what I will do is that I will point out some of the areas that I think greater attention needs to be made in order to answer that question. And while the Prime Minister says that we are ready, I am not sure if that is true, to the extent that I believe there are concerns towards the social services in Barbados, and the Prime Minister tried to liaise the affairs that no, there's no problem with the social services, that this is a fair, and we are just fair mongering. I believe there is issues in housing. I believe there's issues in education, and there are one or two issues that I hope to point out to you tonight. Now, let's start with the healthcare services. Once you become a permanent resident, and it was also in the address of the Prime Minister, you have full access to the universal healthcare, or the free healthcare as we've come to know it in Barbados, as a permanent resident.
As a permanent resident.
Yes, so someone coming in as a permanent resident, based on the information that the Prime Minister gave in her address, you have access to these services. So my question is, you have a scenario where we as Barbadians are already experiencing significant challenges within the public healthcare system, but yet you have the Prime Minister on the television last night trying to allay fears that if we now add 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% to our population base, that those problems are nothing to worry about. I tried to do some research. You have the Accident and Emergency Department, where waiting periods exceed almost 24 hours sometimes. And you hear the stories where people talk about being in the accident and emergency for over 24 hours. I personally know of a friend who told me his mother was sitting in a chair in the accident and emergency for 2 or 3 days.
Yes, I know of one as well. I know of several, 2 to 3 days.
2 to 3 days. You have the drug service. You have the drug service have had in instances. There's an article in 2024 in the Barbados Today, where we've had to almost ration the drug service. We had shortages of certain brands of medicine, adjusting the insulin, and those shortages within the system.